Last night, as we were live on Timcast IRL, the news broke. Politico got its hands on a leaked first draft of a Supreme Court opinion overturning Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, effectively ending federal abortions and returning the issue of abortion to the states. Now, we're still a couple months away from the ruling being set in stone. And the issue now is this leaked document has never happened before in history. And there's a lot to talk about. I think in this segment, what we're going to go through is what this means for the states and break down the news. Now, the reaction is something else entirely. And I believe the reaction suggests, oh, come on, I'm going to say it, civil war. Because you have an unprecedented obstruction and subversion of one of the highest court in this country. And the left is calling whoever leaked this document a hero. What was the intention of the leak? I believe, as many do, that it was to sway the opinion of the court, to terrify Supreme Court justices, and it may work. If with this news and the reaction from the left, they're hoping that someone, maybe Brett Kavanaugh, someone in the Supreme Court will be like, I'm not doing this because of terrorism. Outright. That's what it is. I don't think this country can withstand this. But let's take a look at exactly what this is, because I know a lot of people are talking about it, but we've got some articles from timcast.com explaining what is actually going to happen. And as much as I'd love to jump in and be like, civil war. No. Hold on. We do have an excellent article from Stephen Marsh, where he wrote the book, The Next Civil War, and he talks about how he thinks abortion could be a moral issue similar to slavery. I've held the same opinion for some time, and we've talked about it. But we need to understand what's actually happening if we're going to understand these motivations, because I will break it down for you, my friends. This is not banning abortion. First of all, there's no ruling yet. And even if this ruling does come down and Roe and Casey are gone, then all this means is that blue states will have abortion and red states will be able to ban it. Politico writes, Supreme Court has voted to overturn abortion rights, draft opinion shows. We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. Justice Alito writes, in an initial majority draft circulated inside the court. It's possible that if this wasn't leaked, it would persist as such. But some people have pointed out that in other rulings, I believe specifically in Planned Parenthood v. Casey, that there was a coup after a vote was made and the opinion was written. Several justices were like, nah, we're not doing this. We're upholding Roe. The Supreme Court has voted to strike down the landmark Roe v. Wade decision according to an initial draft majority opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito. The draft opinion is a full-throated, unflinching repudiation of the 1973 decision, which guaranteed federal constitutional protections of abortion rights, and a subsequent 1992 decision, Planned Parenthood v. Casey, that largely maintained the right. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, Alito writes. We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. He writes in the document labeled as the opinion of the court. It is time to heed the Constitution and return to the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. Fascinating. The 98-page opinion. Let's talk politics real quick, and we'll break down what these states do. There are people tweeting at me saying, why aren't I outraged over this if I'm pro-choice? Why aren't I defending the left? Because the left is pro-unfettered, unrestricted access to abortion, and I think there should be restrictions, like most Americans. And more importantly, I'm mostly a constitutionalist, left, slightly center-left libertarian kind of individual, and I don't have the answers for strong moral questions like this. But what I find fascinating on the issue is, no, I'm not going to come out and give a full-throated, as they say, defense of unfettered abortion in this country. I also don't know. I don't have a strong moral position for the most part. If I do not come out and just scream, men shouldn't regulate women's bodies like the left does, they call me right wing. But when I talk to conservatives and I outright say, I think that the government should take a step back from this, abortion access should be safe, legal, and rare, the right just argues with me, and they don't call me a left winger or a leftist and berate me saying, you're against us, simply because I disagree with them. To put it simply, I actually partially agree with the left on a lot of this, and they still call me right wing. I don't get it. Whatever. I can sit down across from Seamus Coughlin, who on Timcast IRL is cheering on this news, and I'm kind of like, I don't know. And he doesn't yell at me or berate me. He's just like, I got what I want. And I'm like, okay. The issue with this is that according to the Constitution, there is no enshrined right to abortion. The argument was basically that the 14th Amendment guarantees life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if a woman doesn't want to carry a baby, which does impact life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, she shouldn't have to. And that they can't restrict her from terminating that pregnancy. And there is, I think, a very challenging legal precedent I don't agree with the right on. The idea that a woman would be forced to carry another person and provide her body and blood to that, I don't know if I agree that the government has a right to enforce that. There's an argument that abortion kills the baby that I get. You don't have a right to terminate a life, but I don't think the government has a right to mandate a person give their blood and body to another person. It's a long-standing argument, and I don't know. So it's not a strong moral position for me. I'm fairly moderate. I say safe, legal, and rare, but the left, here's what I don't understand about this. It's not making it illegal. The states will now be allowed to enshrine the laws as they see fit. So it's technically going to allow a lot of red states to make it illegal, and they will. But I'm just wondering, do women have that many abortions? I mean, this is a serious question. Are women having so many abortions, like every woman everywhere, that they feel this strongly? No, legit, I don't get it. I see these videos coming out where these women are like, we're going back to the Handmaid's Tale. It's the Dark Ages. And I was like, have all of these women saying this they've had multiple abortions? Here's what I think. When you look at what's going to happen, here we go, timcast.com. What happens to abortion access if Roe v. Wade is overturned? If the landmark case is overturned by the Supreme Court, the legality of abortion access will become a state issue. So for the overwhelming majority of Democrat voters in this country, nothing will change. Nothing. Nothing. I mean, if you live in a red state, yeah, you're going to see restrictions, but the red states already do have them, and they've been pushing them and advancing them. And this is still a relatively new issue. I think Roe, as we know, it only started in 92 with Planned Parenthood v. Casey. Let's break down exactly what's going to happen, and then we'll talk about this leak. So, late Monday, a leaked document from the Supreme Court shows this, we understand. Axios provided an overview of what may happen if the court's final opinion matches the leaked document. Wyoming passed a trigger law that would kick in right away if the court completely overturned its precedents, making abortion available only for life-saving measures for the woman. Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee, and West Virginia prohibit any protections for abortion rights. In late April, Oklahoma state lawmakers passed a bill that would ban abortions if the court overrules in whole or in part Roe v. Wade. Florida, Indiana, Montana, and Nebraska appear to be poised to ban access to abortion if the court overturns the precedent, according to an analysis from the Guttmacher Institute. Alabama, Georgia, Iowa, and Ohio, and South Carolina may try to restore measures restricting abortion that federal courts blocked after those laws were passed. Michigan and Wisconsin have abortion bans still in the books that predate Roe v. Wade, but would need to take steps to reenact them. 17 states and Washington, D.C. have passed laws that automatically keep abortion legal if Roe is overturned. In March, Colorado became the latest state to codify the right to having an abortion. Abortion advocates are considering pursuing a ballot measure in 2024 to amend the state's constitution with a long-standing right to abortion. In Vermont, lawmakers have advanced an amendment that would protect the right to get an abortion under the state's constitution. The final opinion of the Supreme Court is not expected until the summer. Roe v. Wade remains in place until the opinion is signed. Votes and drafts may change up to that point. We also have a closer look at laws governing abortion to see exactly what will happen. But I want to tell you my perspective. I want to go through the laws. I'd love to just jump into all of the outrage stuff. I'll do the outrage segment for one, and we'll talk about the coming civil war. And then, this is going to be a crazy day. We'll figure out what's happening with my 4 p.m. segment. I was thinking about the analogy, the similarities between this and slavery as a moral issue. With slavery, you had the issue of an independent being having their lives, their rights stripped from them. You have a human being in the South being told that their lives were under the control of another person. They were not free to make their own decisions. And there was a compromise. There was the 3/5 compromise. Now, interestingly, I think many people on the left don't understand that it was actually the North that wanted slaves to only have 3/5 of a vote. The reason was, in the South, they argued a slave was a full vote. They, of course they would. They wanted more power, right? And the North was like, no, you can't have slaves and then also have them vote. And the South was like, just because they have to do what we say doesn't mean they don't get to vote on political issues. And the North was like, that's literally what it means. They don't get to make these decisions. So the compromise was 3/5 of a vote, which is just crazy to me. But then I started thinking about what we have now with abortion, and where will the ball land, on which side? There's no middle. There's no pedestal by which the coin can be flipped in the air and land on a pedestal in between the issues. No, it's going to come down on one side or the other. So I started thinking about this. 50 years from now, how will they look back at the compromise? Because my position has typically been safe, legal, and rare, which is a compromise. I understand that the right views life beginning at conception. I actually agree with them. I think any other argument is patently absurd. That life doesn't begin at conception, it just defies logic. And the left has no quantifiable or no logical point of when life begins. We've heard after birth. We've heard at 21 weeks. We've heard at 30 weeks. It's a conception. That's when an independent life begins. But there is an interesting argument about whether or not it's an independent life if it cannot sustain itself on its own. Well, that's interesting. It is its unique DNA. But then you have the question of people who are, comatose and on life support. But they can't support their lives on their own. And it's like, a strong moral, difficult moral issue. So there's a compromise. And that compromise is safe, legal, and rare. I wonder if in 50 years they'll look back and they'll call it the safe, legal, and rare compromise. And they'll be like, how insane that you would compromise on the life of, and then will it be the woman or the child? I don't know. I look back to slavery as an issue. Where is the compromise on? The life of the person being subjugated. There was a person who was told you must, and your rights had been stripped from you. And these two sides were willing to compromise on giving some rights, but not all. The left would argue that the compromise strips the rights of the woman. I don't know if I agree with that. The woman has control over the fetus. The woman has the ability to choose. The fetus does not. The fetus is a life. I wonder if that's where we'll go, where if it's a continual push towards protecting life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, how could you not argue to the Supreme Court that a fetus has protected rights the same as any other person? There's no easy answer to this because you're dealing with two different people in one body. There's no easy answer. So I only see this going to be, this country getting ripped apart. A closer look at the state laws governing abortion. If the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, state laws will govern the rights and access to abortion for Americans. So Alabama, HB 237, requiring providers to preserve the life of the child who was born alive. Alaska, HB 69, includes a ban on using Medicaid funds. Arizona, SB 1457, bans abortions due to genetic abnormalities. I don't want to go through every single state, but suffice it to say, there are tons of states that already have varying restrictions. This will be a tough one. The New York Times, how abortion views are different. With the Supreme Court set to hear a major abortion case, we look at the state of public opinion. May 19th, 2021. The reason this is important is that right now trending on Twitter, 70% of Americans is trending. And the argument from the left is that 70% of Americans are pro-choice. 70%. You see, this is a clever manipulation. I will tell you the truth, because I'm not here to tell you how to live, and I'm not here to be the arbiter of truth and morality. On Timcast IRL, we brought this issue up. Our guest, I believe it was Elad Eliyahu, who's also a reporter for Timcast, said most people in this country are pro-choice. If you ask someone, are you pro-life or pro-choice? 70%, according to most polls, will say they're pro-choice. So that's the truth then, huh? Actually, no. If you ask them further questions, if you ask them this question outright, do you believe there should be restrictions on abortion? The overwhelming majority say yes. And therein lies the big issue. I believe 70% of Americans actually believe abortion should be illegal from the after the first trimester. I believe it's after the first. It could be within the second and third, which is comparable. Here we go. A pro-Roe majority. Polls consistently show that a majority of Americans, 60 to 70%, in recent polls, both Gallup and Pew, say they do not want the Supreme Court to overturn Roe. Similarly, 60% of Americans say they favor abortion access in either all or most circumstances. And a pro-restriction majority. Now, this is where it's interesting. Roe, for example, allows only limited restrictions on abortion during the second trimester, mostly involving a mother's health. But less than 30% of Americans say that abortion should generally be legal in the second trimester, according to Gallup. So that is, after the first trimester, no, you can't do it. One sign that many Americans favor significant restrictions is in the Gallup data. Gallup uses slightly different wording than Pew, creating an option that allows people to say that abortion should be legal in only a few circumstances. And that is the most popular answer, 35% giving it, in addition to 20% saying it should be illegal in all circumstances. This helps explain why many abortion rights advocates are worried the Supreme Court will gut Roe without officially overturning it. Yes, the justices are often influenced by public opinion. Well, there you go. Public opinion. Is that really the goal here? I'd say the answer is yes. Leaking this document is unprecedented, and I believe just shows this country is going to falter. Now, sometimes it's really tough to do segments because the overlap is so intense that it would basically be one 35-minute segment instead of two 20-minute segments. So I'm going to hold the Civil War stuff for the 1 p.m. segment, just talk about the law and public opinion for now. And there might be some overlap on this issue, but I don't think I could give adequate time to both issues of the country is falling apart and there's going to be a civil war based on what the left is saying about what's going on and what abortion as an issue actually is. Take a look at this poll because it is important to break down where Americans actually are. This is public opinion on abortion access. Right now, you have about 35% saying legal in only a few circumstances. You have about 28 to 29% saying legal in any. You have illegal in all at 20% and around 13% saying legal in most. Well, let's say, what does legal in most circumstances mean? It means some restrictions. Legal in only a few, restrictions. Illegal in all, restrictions, which means most people want restrictions to some degree. I agree with that. There's an argument to be made in the compromise that while I personally believe life begins at conception, perhaps there's an argument that if it can't sustain itself, which is pre-21 weeks, it's not an independent life form outside of the mother. I don't think that argument really flies. I just look, once there's a unique set of DNA, it exists. It's alive. Any other argument, I think, is just nitpicking. I can understand a compromise between two very angry factions. I'm not going to pretend to have the answers, but I will say the left hasn't given me an argument. On constitutional grounds, the overturning of Roe v. Wade makes sense. Brett Kavanaugh said this should be an issue for Congress. He's right. It should be an issue for states. He's right. And I don't see why the states should be barred from passing laws in this capacity. Let's talk about, Oberfell, the ruling on gay marriage. If it's different. We're talking about legalities under the law. I would argue this. The only reason that the left argues life does not begin at conception is because they instantly lose the argument. Take a look at Loving v. Virginia. Interracial marriage now legalized. Now, I shouldn't say legalized, but the Supreme Court upholds miscegenation laws are unconstitutional because individuals under the law, regardless of race, must be treated equally. That was the point of the 14th Amendment. Okay, so if a black man and a white woman want to get married, yes, they're allowed to, and they can, and should if they love each other. Well, should, I guess, is an opinion, but, they should be allowed to. The issue there is two independent life forms have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Someone else should not have the right to upend their life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness because they don't like what it means for their worldview. Oberfell, gay marriage, same issue. An individual who wants to marry should not be barred based on protected characteristics. Some people have said, but this means there could be polygamy and things. No. It is legal and has been legal for two individuals to get married. If that is the case, then two individuals of the same sex can get married. But these are two individual adults who cannot have their liberties taken away from them. Now you have the issue of abortion. It is not the same thing. If the argument is that life begins at conception, then the state must protect the life of the fetus, in which case they cannot infringe upon the life and liberty of the fetus to protect the life and liberty of the woman. You can't infringe upon one person's rights to protect the other. The issue then comes down to this question. If the woman and child will both survive the pregnancy, then you must not allow the abortion. Because abortion would terminate one life and the other would persist. If the goal of the state is to maximize life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you can't allow abortion at the federal level. The argument from the left, the woman's rights must be maintained. Therefore, they must logically argue the fetus is not a life. I just think that's insane. If the 14th Amendment, as their own argument, is to be upheld, the fetus and the mother must have their rights protected to the best degree we can. Killing the baby terminates its life, so we can't do that. Maintaining the pregnancy does not terminate the life of the woman, but does impact pursuit of happiness, but ultimately, quantifiably, maintains the most amount of rights. Yo, I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers on this one, because I don't believe the state would have a right to say, you must give your body to someone else to preserve their rights. The challenge arises in the case of, say, rape or incest, typically both. If a woman did not choose to carry a baby, I don't believe the state should have the right to be like, well, to protect the right of the infringing force upon you, you must give your body. That's a big challenge, isn't it? So I think there's probably got to be some restrictions, but some compromise. Health, rape, incest. Okay, then it's up to the woman to decide. And it's up to, and I don't think the state should impose that. There's real challenges. I'm not going to pretend to have the answers because this is such a difficult moral question. I don't think I could answer it. This is why I typically fall on the side of safe, legal, and rare. I don't want, if a woman is victimized legitimately, I don't want the state to come in and force some kind of fill out these forms, swear under oath, provide evidence. You know, this being inside of you was forced upon you. That's tough because the being forced upon the woman didn't choose to be there, but now its life is going to be terminated. Man, their life, I suppose you'd say, their life would be terminated. I can't begin to come up with an answer on this one. I do not like the idea of the state saying, give your body and blood to someone else under any circumstances. I don't like the idea of the left arguing this BS life does not begin at conception for the sake of a political argument. I just think there's no real answer to this. And either we're going to have unfettered and unrestricted abortion as the left has been pursuing. And in some instances, post-birth abortion, I know it's not the overwhelming majority of the left, but it has been argued, or the right's outright total ban in all circumstances. I certainly don't have the answers. But this is the situation we're dealing with now. The next segment, I'm going to talk about the leak and the collapse of this country. That'll be at 1 p.m. Stick around. Thanks for hanging out. Comment below. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you all then.